Hello everyone, I'm so glad to see you all again on my channel. Today, we continue the thrilling and emotional journey of the story about CEO James, and light to deep a tale not only of love, but also a life and death battle involving trust, betrayal, and the dark schemes hidden behind the glamour. In the previous episode, after discovering that the group of assassins was sent by John, a dangerous and cunning enemy, Deep was forced to make a daring escape into the deep forest. It wasn't an easy choice. The forest was wild, treacherous, and completely cut off from communication, but she had no other option. As soon as James heard that Deep was in danger, he didn't hesitate to rush into the forest to find her, risking everything. He also immediately contacted Tung, a covert police officer who had supported him multiple times, asking for backup. They all knew that even a 1-second delay could cost Deep her life. However, in the thick fog and looming darkness of the forest, every effort seemed hopeless. It was as if Deep had vanished from the world without a trace, despite being exhausted. James's eyes couldn't hide the worry and pain because the woman he loves is out there somewhere, possibly scared, possibly injured, or worse. James frantically searched through the forest, every narrow trail, every small stream, every dense thicket where he thought Deep might have passed. Under the scorching sun that gradually faded into the golden glow of dusk, he didn't stop for even a minute. His shirt was soaked with sweat, his shoes caked in mud, and his breathing grew more labored by the hour. He didn't allow himself a moment of rest because every passing second could be a lost chance to save her. A whole day passed in despair. No trace, no sound but the wind whistling through the treetops. And then, as twilight crept over the forest, beside a small stream deep within the woods, James's last ounce of strength gave out. He collapsed, his body utterly drained, his mind spinning from dehydration and exhaustion. He passed out, lying motionless among the murmur of the stream and the rustling whispers of the ancient trees. But even in unconsciousness, his heart remained restless. His lips murmured faintly, "Deep, where are you? Can you hear me?" In his hazy mind, memories of their happiest moments resurfaced, her pure smile, those eyes full of trust, and the way her hands clung tightly to his through life's storms. That love was the only thing keeping him from giving up. Even on the edge of life and death, James never stopped hoping. Luckily, at that very moment, an elderly ethnic woman carrying a basket full of forest herbs on her back was on her way home, and happened to pass by the stream. Seeing a strange man lying unconscious by the water, she hurried over in alarm. After checking his breath and pulse, she didn't hesitate. With careful strength, she hoisted James onto her back and carried him to her small hut tucked deep among the hills and rocky cliffs. That entire night, the old woman tended to him like her own grandson, using herbal leaves to lower his fever, placing cool compresses on his forehead, and gently spooning herbal water into his mouth. Her frail frame held endless patience. Her wrinkled hands, though worn by time, were full of warmth. She didn't care who he was. She only knew someone was in trouble, and that was reason enough to help. When the first light of dawn pierced through the thatched roof, James stirred. His vision was blurry, his throat parched, but his awareness slowly returned. He looked around and slowly made out a rustic wooden hut and the figure of the old woman crouched near a small fire, brewing something aromatic with the scent of wild herbs. James struggled to sit up, his voice hoarse. "Ma'am, are you the one who saved me?" The old woman turned, her eyes kind and deep, like they held the wisdom of the entire forest. "Yes. Lucky I found you in time. A little longer and things would have been much worse," she said, her voice heavy with the mountain accent. James looked at her with emotion. His voice choked. "If it weren't for you, I might have." She simply smiled and shook her head. "Good people won't be forsaken by the heavens. Drink this cup of warm tea and then go find the one you're looking for." Though she was just a humble mountain villager with no connection to the modern world, Her compassionate heart became the miracle that saved James's life and the very first light in the darkness he was still walking through. After recovering thanks to the kind old woman's help, James immediately left the wooden hut. Continuing his search for Deep with more determination than ever, he knew he couldn't stop. Even though hope was fading, his heart kept telling him Deep was still alive. She was out there somewhere, waiting for him to find her. He quickly made his way back to the home of the elderly couple, where Deep had once taken refuge, clinging to the fragile hope that maybe she had somehow found her way back there. On the way, his heart was in turmoil. Every step felt heavy with fear, haunted by the worst possible scenarios playing over and over in his mind. As soon as he arrived, he rushed through the gate, his voice hoarse as he called out, "Uncle, Andy, has Deep? Has she come back?" The couple ran out of the house, their faces etched with worry. They shook their heads, eyes filled with visible disappointment and fear. James lowered his head, clenched his fists, struggling to hold back tears. Seeing how exhausted he was, the couple's hearts ached deeply, not just for James, but for Deep, the girl they had come to love like their own daughter. They insisted on going with James into the forest to help with the search. "We can't just sit here anymore. Deep is gentle, fragile. How could she possibly survive alone in the forest like that?" James gently but firmly stopped them. "I understand how much you care for her, but please stay here. If Deep comes back, someone needs to be here to receive her, to help her. I'll work with the police to search and seal off the entire forest. I promise we will find her." The couple held James's hands, their eyes full of both pleading and trust. They knew if anyone would give his all for Deep, it was James. Meanwhile, on the other side, John's men were beginning to realize that the situation was slipping out of control. When they noticed an increasing police presence quietly appearing along the trails and saw local villagers starting to pay attention, they quickly ceased their open search and withdrew from sight. But they hadn't given up. More quietly and cunningly than before, they disguised themselves as locals, carrying baskets, wearing old clothes, pretending to collect herbs or chop wood in the forest. Step by step, they slithered through the wilderness, their eyes watchful and predatory like hunters hiding in the morning mist, waiting for their prey to make one careless move. While James and the police force were putting everything they had into searching for Deep in the forest, another piece of news quietly added to the weight pressing on his heart. From across the ocean, James's mother, a strong and sharp-witted woman living abroad, had already heard the terrible news about Deep. Without a moment's hesitation, she booked the earliest flight home, bringing along a little boy, the son of Deep, and James, carrying with her only one hope, that Deep would soon be found safe and sound. But when James returned home after a long, exhausting day in the forest, his body battered, his face etched with fatigue and despair, and still without any sign of Deep, his mother couldn't bear the shock. "Mom, I'm sorry, there's still no news. Deep is still." She could only clutch her grandson tightly to her chest. Then suddenly her face turned pale and her body trembled. No one expected the woman who had always remained calm and composed to collapse right there, fainting into the arms of the housekeeper. A doctor was called immediately that night. The diagnosis: severe emotional shock coupled with high blood pressure. She had to remain bedridden, her complexion pale, eyes too weak to open. James stood beside his mother's bed, hands clenched tightly, his heart feeling like it was being torn apart. On one side was his mother, falling ill out of worry for her daughter-in-law and grandson. On the other side was Deep, the woman he loved, still missing in the depths of the forest. Possibly surrounded by danger, he felt himself crumbling physically and emotionally. It was at that moment that he called Trang, his close and trusted friend. James had no other choice. "Trang, please, can you stay and take care of my mother for me? She can't eat. And the doctor said someone needs to be by her side at all times. I have to go back to the forest. I can't give up now." Trang nodded without asking anything further. She understood James. She knew that right now he couldn't stay still, couldn't stop because the woman he loved with all his heart was still out there, waiting to be saved. After making all the necessary arrangements at home, from asking Trang to care for his mother, to entrusting his young son to a trusted relative, James officially announced his temporary withdrawal from the company. He signed an emergency delegation order to his most trusted assistant and sent out a brief internal notice he would be absent indefinitely due to a personal emergency. No explanations, no press, no conferences. To him now, nothing mattered anymore, not even the career he had spent over a decade building. He gave up tailored suits and grand boardrooms, put on a faded shirt, laced up rugged boots, and stepped into a search mission with no end in sight. But in his heart, only one voice echoed, "I have to find you, Deep, no matter what it takes." The special police unit brought in more reinforcements. An emergency meeting was held at the border outpost closest to the dense forest, where Deep might have been hiding or held captive. Spread out before them on the map were red-marked zones: dangerous cliffs, treacherous terrain, overgrown hills. Plans were set in motion, drones sweeping from above, sniffer dogs tracking traces of blood or scent, checkpoints established at forest exits. Everything was executed with precision, professionalism, and urgency, but the one variable they couldn't account for was John's deafening silence. No threats, no ransom calls, no confirmation that Deep had even been captured. And that silence was the most terrifying part of all, because when John said nothing, it meant anything was possible. Deep might have been killed to erase evidence, or was still being held, hunted down minute by minute in the unforgiving wilderness. James was on the edge of madness. He knew Deep had been injured while fleeing. A small bloodstain left on a branch was their only clue. And now, it was the third day, no signal, no sign of life, no cry for help. To James, every passing hour felt like a knife through the heart. Just imagining her somewhere out there, cold, hungry, terrified, and alone, made him gasp for air like he was suffocating. Through endless rain-soaked nights, James never slept. He sat still at the outpost window, gripping a photo of him and Deep, eyes fixed on the blackened horizon as if he could pierce through it. His mind overflowed with memories: their first embrace, her soft smile while cooking, her delicate hand holding his during a stormy night in Saigon. These images played on a cruel loop, like a silent scream. Don't let this become just a memory. And so, despite the team doctor warning that he was sleep-deprived, exhausted, and suffering from low blood pressure, James refused to rest. He quietly grabbed a flashlight, a radio, and a bottle of water, and slipped out of the command center while others were preparing for the night shift. The rain had started again. Cold wind whipped across his face, mud clung to his clothes. But James didn't care. Every step he took was a silent vow: "You're still alive, you need me, and I won't let you be alone." He retraced the stream where they had once found a piece of cloth that resembled Deep's shirt, now fading with the current. He pushed through thorny bushes, slipped, fell, got up again, hands scraped and bleeding from branches, but he didn't stop. Every sound in the forest, every rustle, every snap made him freeze, eyes wide with hope. "Deep, can you hear me? It's James. Where are you?" His voice echoed through the empty forest, then dissolved into the steady patter of rain and the hollow howl of wind. No answer. James was no longer himself. It had been 3 days. He hadn't eaten a proper meal. Rescue team rations were left untouched on the table, cold and forgotten, when someone forced him to drink a few sips of water. He nodded absently, then rushed back out again, eyes wild, as if racing against time and fate. His body was deteriorating, dark circles under his eyes, pale skin, each step heavier than the last. But not once did James stop. In his mind, only one thought repeated: if I rest, if I stop even for a moment, what if that's the exact second she needs me most? There were times he collapsed beneath a mossy tree trunk, soaked to the bone as fine mist turned into freezing drizzle. Wind howled through the branches like a whale. His fingers gripped the small scarf he had found the day before. Deep's perhaps the last trace she left behind, a faint, fragile sign she had once been there. You're still alive, aren't you, Deep? You have to be, because I'm still searching. The rain didn't stop. The mud clung to his legs. The cold cut through to the bone, but James kept walking. No map, no companion, just a fading flashlight and a heart breaking with every breath. Even though all he got in return for calling her name was the echo of silence, James didn't give up. Even though every broken twig beneath his feet made him fear the worst, he pressed on, because for him, giving up was never an option. Even in the middle of a storm, in the heart of the forest, or at the edge of despair, James believed so long as he could still breathe, still take one more step, he would never stop searching for the woman he loved. While James and the Special Task Force were tirelessly searching for Deep in the forest, everyone's eyes lined with fatigue. Suddenly, the shrill ring of a phone pierced through the heavy silence. A police officer quickly answered the call, and after a few urgent exchanges, his expression lit up. Someone's reported seeing a girl matching our description. All eyes immediately turned toward him. James froze, then rushed over. Where? Is she okay? About 50 kilometers southwest, in a small village near the base of Mount Tomo. A local reported seeing a petite girl, wearing torn clothes, barefoot, stumbling as she walked. She looked very much like the girl in the photo we've circulated. James felt his heart skip a beat, a fragile glimmer of hope, but to him, it was like the first beam of light breaking through the darkness that had consumed the last 3 days. Without hesitation, he gripped the team leader's arm. We have to get there immediately. If it's Deep, she might be injured and unable to go much further. The team immediately reorganized. One group remained behind to continue sweeping the forest in case this was a diversion, while James and a recon unit jumped into a tactical vehicle, heading down the narrow mountain path toward the village. Inside the vehicle, James said nothing. He sat still, eyes fixed ahead, one hand clutching Deep's photo tightly as if willing his very soul into it. His heart pounded violently, his mind torn between hope and fear. Could it truly be Deep, or just someone who looked like her? But whatever the truth was, he had to go. Because even if there was only a 1% chance, it was still a chance he couldn't afford to miss. The road to the village was rugged, narrow, and winding along the mountainside. But the vehicle sped forward at maximum speed. Wind howled outside. Branches whipped against the car's body like nature itself, urging them forward. Inside James, a storm raged. For 3 long days, he had lived in anguish, desperation, and soul-crushing fear, and now, even a brief message, a single report, was enough to reignite a flame inside him. Hope that the woman he loved was still alive. Hope that she was waiting for him, maybe less than an hour away. So, will James find Deep? Is the young woman spotted in the small village 50 kilometers away truly Deep, the woman he has been desperately searching for all these days? Or is it just another fragile glimmer of hope, destined to fade away? And if it isn't her, then where is Deep? Has she really fallen into the hands of John's ruthless men? Does she still have the strength to hold on long enough for James to reach her? All of this remains a mystery. James's journey is far from over. Danger still lurks in every shadow, and time continues to slip away each minute, each second pressing down on the heart of a man who refuses to give up. Stay tuned for the next tense and emotional episode, airing tomorrow, to find out whether fate will finally give James and Deep a chance to reunite, or whether the storm is only just beginning. Don't forget to leave a comment below to send your prayers for Deep's safety, and to give strength to James, the man who risked everything just to find the woman he loves. See you in the next episode.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người. Mọi người ơi, hôm nay thì mình vừa mới hoàn thành video về câu chuyện của James và Lý Tử Diệp. Trong phần tiếp theo thì mình đã ngay lập tức đăng tải lên để cho mọi người theo dõi. Và kênh của mình thì hầu như là sẽ lên rất là đều nội dung về James và Lý Tử Diệp. Và mình mong rằng mọi người sẽ ủng hộ hơn nữa cho kênh của mình bằng cách là sẽ like và chia sẻ video, cũng như là để lại những bình luận để đóng góp ý kiến cho kênh của mình nhiều hơn. Và mọi người ơi, hiện tại thì nội dung của James và Lý Tử Diệp nó đang đến một hồi rất là gay cấn, nên là mình mong rằng mọi người hãy đăng ký kênh, sau đó là bật chuông thông báo lên để không bỏ lỡ bất kỳ một tập nào mọi người nhé. Và nếu như mà mọi người yêu quý kênh mình hơn thì cũng hãy chia sẻ video này đến những bạn bè của mình, người thân của mình, để họ cũng có thể được xem câu chuyện hay và ý nghĩa này nha. Và một lần nữa cảm ơn mọi người rất nhiều vì đã dành thời gian để xem hết video. Hẹn gặp lại mọi người ở những video tiếp theo.